All right, howdy folks. Welcome back to Top Comics Pressing. This one's going to be a little bit different video. I do read all of the comments on the channel and I try to respond to as many of them as possible. So in this video, what I want to do here is respond to David Clark, who had a few things to say about a comment I made in my crack or not to crack video. So if you go back and watch, there's a screen of videos there, and I made a comment about newsstands, and particularly in the late 70s that newsstand copies, even in 9.8, are much more common than direct copies. And David really objected to that, pointing out that his experience being at, the Mile High comic book store and spinner racks destroying comic books. I left a comment just saying that that wasn't my understanding of the thing, and he did respond again with kind of the same message. And so I thought I would just do a little video here, at least where I'm getting that from, to make a comment and respond. I will say these comments got removed. I did not delete them. I don't know if David deleted them, or I don't know if YouTube deleted them, but if you want to insult me in the comments, you're welcome to. The only things I delete are either if they're clearly spam, I delete that, or if it's objectively derogatory or offensive, I'll delete that and report it to YouTube. But you're welcome to insult me as much as you'd like. So just to walk you through some of the information where I'm pulling it from. So this is directly from Go Collect here. You can just see that on their webpage. You can capture the URL if you'd like. And then got this in conversation with Jim Shooter. And so you can see their plot here of at least what was published. Now, there's a couple of things to keep in mind here that I think are really important and might lead to some misunderstandings of this newsstand versus direct. First of which, these numbers are for what was published and distributed. They do not reflect what was necessarily either purchased or converted to 9/8 in 2024. Of course, things being damaged selectively on a spinner rack can affect that, but they also do not reflect the actual number of comic books for sale in a given market. And so it's important for us to recognize that there is likely a bias when converting these distribution numbers to current 9/8 sales. That could be impacted either by selective damage to, let's say, newsstands over directs, but also if there are people either hoarding newsstands or manipulating the markets for certain issues of those comics because they might have lower census counts. It doesn't take a whole lot to buy up a stock. That's especially true, I think, if you look at certain golden age books that almost never pop up for sale, but clearly have census counts that indicate that they should pop up for sale. And it's highly probable that somebody might have 8, 10, or 20 copies of that comic book that they're just stashing. And of course, if it's a rare book, you can actually do that and control a market that way. So it's important for us to just recognize that as part of the discussion. Now, what I want to do here is a quick hypothetical math. So let's say 94% of the newsstands were published and only 6% of directs were published. We can hypothetically assign, let's say, a damage ratio or a 9/8 conversion ratio and see how that maps out to give us a number today for what we might see in the marketplace. So let's assume that more than 9 out of 10 of these comic books were destroyed or damaged in a way that would prevent them from being 9/8. And let's assume that you're only going to get roughly 10%. That would be 9.4% then of the overall market would be 9/8. It's obviously probably less than that, but we just hypothetically bear with me for the math here. We'll just say it's 10%. And let's say the much, much smaller market here of directs at 6% had an astounding, truly astounding 67% conversion to 9/8. So that might be a miraculous ratio, but even with a very low amount here and a very, very high amount there, you'll see that that would be 9.4% directs, or sorry, newsstands, and that would be about 4% directs. So we would still have roughly a 9-to-4 ratio, which would mean we would still have an overrepresentation of newsstands relative to directs by a factor of more than 2-to-1. And so it's important to apply that math to the actual distribution number and then estimate to see what that could be. And obviously we don't have what those damage rates are for all of these comic books. It's just important to think through all of the steps that might go into it. And some of that bias might be we're only seeing what is slabbed today in 9/8, and so people have warehouses full of comic books that are not slabbed. We're not capturing the whole picture. Nevertheless, this is at least the distribution numbers, and the distribution that you're given is about 1986 is the inflection point, 1985, depending, is exactly which publisher, who knows. But it's going to be somewhere in the mid to late 80s is where you're really going to have direct copies overtake newsstands by volume. And then let's just look at some issues here. Oh, and by the way, another reason that I have an issue with the comment that was left is there was a thing about spinner racks destroying comic books. This is right from the same Go Collect image here, and you can see right off the bat that these are stacks of comic books on shelves. There is a spinner rack here, and of course, if you take a handful of those books and you drop them in the spinner rack, that'll wreck them. And I can remember going into the store where I used to get comics from as a kid, and they would have a whole bunch on the shelf. Usually, it was the things on the shelf were more like the Time magazines or Newsweeks or those sorts of more adult focused content. And then of course you had a spinner rack full of comic books. And yeah, I mean, for sure, people would wreck stuff on the spinner rack. You'd get corners dog-eared over. You'd have comics sitting sideways that got flopped or nicked. For sure, the spines would get trashed. Anything with a little bar underneath where a book would get slammed into it. That being said, though, I mean, this book's got or this store pictured here has a shelf and a spinner rack. And so unless we have comprehensive data on every mom and pop pharmacy or corner store going all the way back into the late 70s and early 80s, there's not really a way to quantify how many of those stores used a shelf versus a spinner rack, even though we can acknowledge the spinner rack definitely did not do any favors to high-grade comics. Okay, so with that established, let's teleport all the way back to 1976 here. And what I'm going to do for all of these issues is I'm going to show you current listings available on eBay, as well as sold listings on eBay, as well as sold listings on Heritage. And so I'm just going to pick a key issue. And intentionally, when picking these key issues, I'm not going to pick the cream of the crop, again, because there is the risk of that market manipulation factor in there. And so if you pick only the biggest and best issues, you might have a skewed data set. So I'm going to look at what I would consider to be kind of B-level keys from each of these eras, or at least books that fit a little bit better. I will also point out, as comics became more of a collectible thing, specifically in the 1980s, some key #1 issues might be overly distributed selectively to comic book stores, which bought a massive supply of direct copies to hoard or spec on or whatever term you want to apply, but they may have been disproportionately distributed. So Spawn #1 is that way, where at least back in the day there were just piles of Spawn 1 everywhere. All right, so anyway, this is 1976 Nova. A direct copy of this era would have a slash mark over the barcode, so a left to right downward slash, and that would indicate it is a direct copy. As far as I can tell, every single sale here on Heritage is a newsstand copy, and we can look here, that is 47 sold items going back quite a long period of time. And if you scroll, every single one of these is newsstand. We can then go to current listings on eBay and see that, again, these are all newsstand. Every single one of them from 1976 is a newsstand copy. And as far as I can tell, going through the complete and utter list here, you can see in the bottom corner of each of these, they are newsstand. And if we go to sold listings on eBay, both for Nova 1 and Nova 4 here, which is a first appearance and a Thor overlap, you can see every single one of these is, again, a newsstand copy. And so 1976, I think you're going to be really, really hard pressed to find any of them that have that black barcode slash over them, at least as far as I can tell. All right, so that's Nova 1. If I close that tab and go down here, we can look at 1977 is the breakout year for one of the best movies of all time, Star Wars #1. So a 9.8 copy of this would be a true grail copy for anybody's collection. I don't even have anywhere near close to a 9.8 copy. But again, you can see both for Star Wars 1 and Star Wars 4 and Star Wars 2, if we're looking in that bottom corner again, every single one of these from 1977 is a newsstand copy. I do not see, this one's a reprint. I do not see any copies on eBay, sold on eBay, or sold on Heritage that have that black stripe from 1977. So you can scroll. Here is the sold listings. So again, full barcode, full barcode, full barcode, um, full barcode, full barcode. You can just scroll kind of at your leisure. This one is obviously a later issue here, 19, let's see here, which one is it, 93. So 1977 here is just denoting the run, but that's going to be, mid to late 80s book. We see a direct copy there. But the rest of these are all newsstand copies, as we see there, including Godzilla, which somehow hit my Star Wars search term on eBay. And then if we go over to Heritage here, this is 101 sales of 9.8 copies recorded on Heritage. Every single one of them, as far as I can see, is a newsstand copy. I don't see any direct sales, again, with that black slash through the barcode. All right, 1977, let's go to 1979, where I will have Uncanny X-Men number 121, first appearance of the Alpha Flight. So again, all of these now, 1979 is about as late 1970s as you can get. So if I'm making comments about the late 1970s, this is what I'm talking about. And again, you can see absolutely every single one of these issues is a newsstand copy, and there are plenty of 9.8 sales reported. We can go over to eBay and click. Again, there are several copies up. That one's a 9.0, 9.0. Clearly, I didn't have 9.8 in here. Newsstand, 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 newsstand. And again, my search term is not reflecting that. Newsstand doesn't even appear in any of these titles anywhere. And it's because that's all you're going to find are 9.8 newsstands from 1979. Sales are the same. So these are all newsstands. These are similarity search. Thank you, eBay, for finding things similar. Okay, let's jump forward a little bit more here. If we go to our early 1980s, so 1983, we can look at the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill and Thor 337, kind of keeping with our vibe of, B plus level keys. So Beta Ray Bill is a popular character, hasn't made it quite yet into the MCU more than referencing to Stormbreaker and a statue, but he's a popular character that's been reoccurring. Right off the bat, you can see that the market has shifted between 1979 and 1983. All three of the top three hits there are directs, and 2 out of 3 directs there. Only 1 direct and 2 newsstands. 1 newsstand, 2 directs. Newsy, direct, newsy, newsy, direct, newsy, 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 newsy. And so I think Thor 337 is about 50-50. If you look newsstand direct across these sales, newsy, direct, newsy, 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 direct, newsy, 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 direct. So I'm calling that about 50-50. We scroll over to eBay, we can find something similar here. So newsstand, newsstand, direct, direct, newsstand, direct, newsstand, direct, newsstand. So you can scroll all you want on your own, but based on Heritage, sold items on eBay, and current listings on eBay, I'm calling Thor 337 about 50-50. That is, there is no increased rarity whatsoever for the newsstand. There are plenty of 9.8 newsstand sales recorded, and it does not appear to garner any particular special advantage. I mean, this is literally a $10 delta between that newsstand and the next direct copy down below. Somebody paid a little bit more of a premium for that one. This one, is in the same ballpark. So Thor 337, I'm calling 50-50. Nothing too spectacular there. If we go from 1983 forward just a bit to 1984, we can look at probably one of the most popular comics of the 1980s, Secret Wars number 8. And if we scroll here, we will all of a sudden see a bias for the direct. So direct, newsstand, direct, newsstand, direct, direct, newsstand, direct, direct. And so you can see that kind of across the board here, direct. I'm thinking overall, as I look at all of these, it's probably about 75 to 80% are direct sales. across the board. So you can see that the overwhelming majority of the sales, and I'm not zooming in, by the way, a lot of these on Heritage are probably the same book that was consigned, bought, and then reconsigned again. So you can see there's at least some newsstand, another newsstand. But yes, there is a bias for Secret War 8 to be predominantly direct. We are at that inflection point of 1984 here. And so again, one of the things that I want to talk about at this juncture is if we think about that math for the damage ratio or the inability to convert spinner comics to 9/8, we're going to have the greatest sensitivity to observe that right at this inflection point. Because right at that 1984 mark, when the markets of direct and newsstand are about 50-50, if we're seeing a skew to 80-20, which I think is about the case for Secret Wars #8, then that's going to reflect about a 4-to-1 bias for having damage on the newsstand books over the direct books. And so I think that's both real, but it takes us to about 1984, well past our late 1970s comment. And again, my comments here are about the late 1970s, specifically called out, and not the mid 1980s. But definitely by the time you get to the mid 1980s, you will start to see that bias. That being said, if we look at another comic, from the same year and equally as popular as the Amazing Spider-Man number 252, and equally significant to the Amazing Spider-Man fans. If we look at Heritage here, again, I'm not putting newsstand in there. All three of the top there are newsstand, direct, newsstand, direct, direct, newsstand, direct, 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 newsstand, 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 direct. So the ASM 252 looks like, based on sales, that it is roughly 50-50. Again, newsstand, newsstand, direct. And I think what that is people were overbuying Secret Wars #8 and they were stashing them. Okay, and why would you do that? Well, it was an incredibly popular crossover. And so, comic stores were loading up on those. People were super jazzed about it. Again, if you go to eBay, direct, newsstand, 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 direct, newsstand, 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 direct, newsstand, newsstand, direct. So I'm calling ASM 252 roughly 50-50. Fewer newsstand sales, a little bit more direct, but there's plenty listed, and the Heritage database is pretty much 50-50. And so why do I think that is? Well, people, again, were stocking up and speccing, and they had massive overproduction of Secret Wars because it was incredibly popular. It was a mega smash event. Okay, so going back to the Go Collect and drawing conclusions from this, I think I've shown you enough here that I kind of wanted to talk through. Definitely in 1976, good luck finding any with that barcode slash. 1977, couldn't find any. 1979, nope, still not there. You got to go to Beta Ray Bill in 1983, and you got to go to ASM 252 in 1984. And even with those in the mid 80s, it's about 50-50. So this whole bit about newsstands being so much more rare, really, I don't think is important until the late 1980s, when the Batman '89 movie was getting super popular, when collectors were speccing on everything. And of course, that led us into the 90s comic book boom, followed by bubble, followed by crash. And so I think that's when people were starting to hoard massive amounts of stuff from their local comic book stores. And again, why might you not have this huge distribution? Because not every comic book sold at every corner store went onto a spinner rack. People are very easily biased by their own personal experiences, and I think that's exactly what's happening here. So that's all I got to say on the matter. Please go ahead and leave your comments down below. Happy to engage in the community. I do read and try to interpret your comments and give you direct feedback as possible. But I think my statements that you're hard pressed to find direct copies from the late 1970s is full up with all of the sales data and scans I can see on either eBay or Heritage. So that's my conclusions. Please leave a thumbs up on the video, share with a friend, and as always, keep on collecting what you like. For me personally, I like the direct copies, particularly for the McFarlane Spider-Mans when you get some extra art in the bottom corner. I've never been one to pay a premium for newsstands. I will pay a premium, though, for a rare Golden Age book, because those are legitimately hard to find. But, I enjoy 80s books. I enjoy 90s books. I've got some really awesome chrome covers from the 90s that are $1 a dozen, but man, do they make me giggle because they bring me back to some serious nostalgia. So anyway, folks, that's all I got to say here. Take care.